For now, we can't announce any details.
We are very satisfied with the Danish model and pay tribute to the extraordinary courage of the Ukrainian people.
We are working to invest every additional dollar into Ukrainian production and to scale up this production.
This partnership is, in many ways, an equal one.
Ukraine may obtain the right to produce one of Europe's most renowned long-range cruise missiles, the French Scalp. Just a few years ago, this would have sounded like science fiction, but Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov has officially confirmed that negotiations with France are ongoing, and the parties have already moved on to a more detailed discussion of the license. If an agreement is reached, this will become the biggest change in military technical cooperation with the West since the start of the full-scale war. For the first time, Ukraine will not just receive a Western missile, but will also participate in its production. And this could mean more than just another package of military aid. Today, we'll break down how realistic it is to produce the Scalp missile in Ukraine. Why is France even willing to discuss transferring the license? What long-range systems is Ukraine already developing on its own, and how could this affect the course of the war? Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. The Scalp missile is not new to the Ukrainian army. It is a long-range air-launched cruise missile, classified as air-to-surface, developed jointly by the United Kingdom and France. The French version is called Scalp, while the British counterpart is known as Storm Shadow. This weapon was specifically designed to destroy important, well-protected stationary targets. France first supplied these missiles to Ukraine in the summer of 2023. President Emmanuel Macron announced this decision at the NATO summit in Vilnius. Since then, Ukraine has integrated the Scalp onto its Soviet-designed Su-24M fighter jets and used them against strategic targets. The Chonhar Bridge, which connects Crimea with the occupied part of Kherson region, the port of Sevastopol, and other facilities deep within occupied territories. But until 2026, it was exclusively about the supply of ready-made missiles. However many the Allies would provide, that's how many there would be. There was no production in Ukraine. Notably, even France itself resumed production of the Scalp only in 2025 for the first time in 15 years, and the final assembly is still tied to a single MBDA plant in Celles Saint-Denis. On June 29th, at a joint briefing with Danish Defense Minister Jeppe Bruus, Mikhailo Fedorov publicly confirmed for the first time that the issue of a license for the Scalp was discussed at the highest level during Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to France in a conversation with Emmanuel Macron.
Yes, I can say that during our president's visit to France, he had a very good conversation with Macron about the possibility of sharing the license for Scalp missiles with our country. The discussion is still ongoing, both with the government and with the company regarding this, and all the details are being clarified. There really is progress there.
According to the minister, the discussion is now taking place not only at the diplomatic level, but also directly with the manufacturer, the European consortium MBDA. The company, together with the French government, is coordinating the technical details of how exactly missile production outside of France might look. Despite the progress, Fedorov immediately outlined the main obstacles. It's not about a political decision, but rather a complex legal and industrial process.
It's a very complicated process that involves intellectual property in general, setting up production and so on. There is a certain amount of bureaucracy involved in this.
The Scalp cruise missile is not just one factory and not just one part. It consists of dozens of components, the rights to which belong to different contractors, and the final assembly is still tied to a specific MBDA production line in France. Transferring the license for such a weapon means negotiating not only with the French government, but also with the company itself about which specific components Ukraine will be able to produce on its own territory and which it will not. That is why the minister is cautious in his wording. Negotiations are ongoing, there is progress, but there are no specific deadlines or guarantees yet. Negotiations with France are not the only direction. At the same time, a separate dialogue is ongoing at the level of the National Security and Defense Council with the United States regarding a license to produce an air defense system.
At this particular moment, we are not in a position to disclose any specific details. But in general terms, it is already entirely without precedent that this was announced following the G7, and that such significant deliberations have even commenced.
This is not an isolated incident. Back on June 16th, Zelensky stated that he personally asked US President Donald Trump to grant Ukraine licenses to produce American anti-missile systems, specifically the Patriot, given that US production capacities for interceptors are already overloaded. According to Zelensky, Trump's response was positive, although there is still no final decision. And just a few days earlier, at the Group of Seven summit in Evian, France, the leaders of the Group of Seven promised in a joint statement to expand the supply of air defense systems and long-range weapons to Ukraine, and also declared their readiness to consider granting a license for their production directly in Ukraine. Despite negotiations with Paris and Washington, Ukraine's priority remains the development of its own defense industrial complex, rather than dependence on foreign licenses.
As for long-range weapons in general, we can see that we have scaled up the production of Ukrainian missiles and deep strike capabilities. At the moment, it is very important to support Ukrainian manufacturers through the Danish model or other support formats because we understand how to scale up what is already working effectively. And as of today, we are relying as much as possible and placing our hopes on our own capabilities in this regard. That is why we are working to invest every additional dollar into Ukrainian production and to scale up this production.
The so-called Danish model is a mechanism by which partner countries finance not finished weapons, but production capacities within Ukraine itself.
We are very satisfied with the Danish model as well as with how cooperation between Ukraine and Denmark is being built. We are moving forward in this direction and will continue to develop the relevant programs.
Denmark has already allocated about 74 million euros for this, just within the framework of the latest 30th aid package.
That is precisely why it is necessary to always be one or two steps ahead. And in this, you have achieved great success. We can all see the capabilities you have already achieved, particularly in delivering deep strikes that hit the Russian economy and other sectors.
And these are not just words. Ukrainian long-range missiles, including the Flamingo by Firepoint, are already regularly striking military targets deep inside Russian territory without any foreign licenses or permissions. The license for Scalp is not the only example of Ukraine drawing closer to Western arms manufacturers. The German conglomerate MBDA has already signed a strategic agreement with the company Ukrainian Armor for the joint development of long-range strike systems. And the European Commissioner for Defense and Space, Andrius Kubilius, publicly called the Ukrainian defense industrial complex one of the most innovative in Europe, urging for its closer integration into the European defense industry. Regardless of how the negotiations over Scalp end, the main point is already clear. Ukraine is capable of striking strategic targets deep within Russian territory with its own weapons. A license for Scalp will not replace this capability. It will complement it by adding another type of long-range weapon that will not depend on annual decisions by allies regarding the next delivery. For the defense industry, this potentially means new production capacities, jobs, and technologies that will remain in Ukraine forever, not just for the duration of the war. The Danish model and the MBDA agreement with Ukrainian armored vehicles demonstrate a steady trend. Partners are increasingly willing to finance production within the country, rather than simply supplying finished products.
Of course, it was important for me to come to Kyiv, to Ukraine, to demonstrate the continuation of our strong support, both from the new Danish government and from the entire Danish people to the Ukrainians. We continue to maintain strong solidarity, honoring the memory of those who have fallen, supporting the wounded, and paying tribute to the extraordinary courage of the Ukrainian people.
But there is another aspect to this issue, the reputational one.
My dear colleague, a great deal has changed over these many years, but this professional partnership is, in so many different ways, a truly equal one. Speaking from the Danish perspective, we also need to do even more to learn from you, both in terms of technology and your extensive military experience.
The very fact that France is considering transferring a license for one of Europe's key cruise missiles, and that European Commissioner Kubilius publicly calls the Ukrainian defense industry one of the most innovative on the continent, indicates a shift in Ukraine's status in the eyes of the West, from a recipient of aid to a technological partner.
We are building a very transparent procurement system and in general support for the market in Ukraine. After I became minister, we launched tender procedures for the procurement of 155 caliber long-range artillery. Now we have launched the first tender for the procurement of drones, and we will procure all types and kinds of drones through tender procedures. Therefore, our task is to build the most transparent procurement system in the world, not just for Ukraine, and this serves as an example because all arms procurement markets in the world are quite closed. We are building the most transparent market. So I think this will be an example for everyone.
There is no final agreement yet. There is progress, there are discussions at the level of presidents, governments, and the manufacturing company. But there are also unresolved issues of intellectual property and bureaucracy, which Fedorov himself openly mentions. How quickly these obstacles can be overcome remains to be seen. But one thing is already clear: Ukraine no longer wants to be just a recipient of Western weapons. It wants to become a co-producer of them. Well, that's it for this episode. If you found it useful, give us a like and subscribe to the channel, and also share your thoughts about what you've heard in the comments. Will France really agree to transfer scalp production technology to Ukraine? Or will the partners keep such developments under their own control? See you in the next episode.